So this morning we're continuing our Joseph series. We've subtitled this Living the Dream, and we say that with sort of equal parts sarcasm and some truth. That we haven't seen a lot of it yet, but there are portions of Joseph's life that do appear to be like he's actually living the dream. There's a lot of it that we've seen and we'll see today that feels like the sarcastic side of living the dream. And a couple weeks ago, James kicked off the series for us. And he started by helping us understand like the context and where culture was, how Joseph and his family came about, and the resounding theme that God was always with them. And, you know, it's hard sometimes to see God in all the nuances of his people's lives. And I think we all feel that. We all know that there are days where maybe we feel like God is very present, and then there are days that it feels like maybe God's far off. But the theme that we saw and the patterns and the history leading up to Joseph was that God was with his people. I thought James did a great job of setting that stage. Also, today is James's birthday, so you should probably say happy birthday to him. I thought about making us sing, but we'll save it. But James did a great job, and James is an inspiration to me. And I look at the way he loves his wife and loves his kids and loves our church and the people that he interacts with, and I'm inspired by him. So I'd like to be just like James when I grow up. He's just slightly older than I am. What are you, 29? Is it? Yeah, 29 probably. So and then a couple weeks ago, Raleigh came and he had an amazing message. I don't know if you have caught all these. As I've always said, if you've missed any of these messages, please go back and watch or listen to them. You can find them on our website, zootownchurch.com, or on our podcast channels. It's really been an awesome series, in my opinion. And Raleigh talked about Joseph. He kind of introduced us to Joseph. He talked about who Joseph was. At this point, he's one of 12 sons for Jacob. And Joseph is like, he's the brother they all hate. And that's because Jacob loves him more than any of his other kids. And it's weird, like that feels so interesting as a parent. If you're a parent, loving one kid more than another feels like territory you shouldn't stand in ever. But the Bible's fairly clear about it, that Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children. And so Raleigh talked about some of Joseph's life as he was young. Joseph has a couple of dreams, and the first one, him and his brothers are out in the fields, and they're collecting wheat, and so they each have a bundle of wheat, and Joseph's bundle sort of stands up in the middle of all these other bundles, and the other 11 bow down to him. And Joseph has the, I don't know if it's audacity or just lack of self-awareness, but he describes this dream to his brothers. He tells them all about it. And, you know, of course, they love him for it. No, they hate him, right? They're like, we already didn't like you. Dad loves you more than anybody, any of the rest of us. And now you're telling us a dream where basically we all bow down to you at some point in the future. And so Joseph has that dream. He tells his brothers about it, and that doesn't go very well. He has a second dream, and in this dream, the sun and the moon and 11 stars are present. And I don't know what it looks like for a star or the sun to bow down, but Joseph has the sense that these celestial things are bowing down to him. And he describes that to his family, even describes it to his father Jacob. And Jacob scolds him for it. Surely your mother and I won't be bowing down to you. But that's Joseph's dream, and he wasn't afraid to share it. The other resounding theme that came out of Raleigh's message for me was the robe and the significance. And Bryce talked about this some last week. I think, you know, as a kid, I've always had this mental picture of the coat of many colors, you know, and I think I knew that signified something, you know, especially the fact that his father loved him so much that he gave him this special coat. But it was neat to come to the realization that beyond that, this coat represented a status. It represented that Joseph was no longer just present with the brothers working in the field, right? The type of clothing you would wear if you were out in the field, they were herding sheep generally, would be very different than this robe that his father has given him. So it showed that he was greater than his brothers, and that added to their jealousy. And the key thing that Raleigh touched on that, man, just sat with me was that, we know this story, right? So Joseph is wearing this coat. He's not out with his brothers herding the sheep, and his father, Jacob, sends him out to check on his brothers and bring him a report of how things are going. So he goes out to find his brothers. His brothers see him coming from a long way off, and they're either mad at him, they hate him, they're jealous of him, so they plot against him. And so when he gets there, they take him captive, and they say, we'll even kill him. But before they do that, they throw him in a pit. And I imagine Joseph in this pit feeling all of the walls around him, and not seeing an escape route, probably knowing in his heart that his brothers are capable of killing him. But before they can do that, they decide that why not make some money off of him? Instead of killing him, we'll sell him. So he's sold into slavery. He ends up in Egypt, and he becomes a slave in Potiphar's house. So Bryce picked up the story last week, and he told us about Potiphar. Potiphar is an officer to Pharaoh, who's king of Egypt. He's captain of the palace guard. He's a very important person. And Joseph is brought into his house, and he could have wallowed in self-pity. It's sort of what I would expect, right? Like, your brothers hate you, you've been kidnapped, you're sold into slavery. It feels like the easiest thing in the world would just be to I'm just going to deplete and not really exist anymore. But he doesn't. That's not what he does. His character is that he's diligent and he keeps working. And after some time, he actually earns a place of very high standing in Potiphar's house. He's put in charge of everything that Potiphar owns. And it says that everything that Joseph touched for Potiphar flourished. So not only is he in charge of it, it's actually flourishing. Soon Potiphar's wife takes notice of Joseph, for he is handsome and well-built, which is funny language, but I like the well-built part. And she tries to seduce him. She says, "Come to bed with me." And she makes multiple attempts at this, and Joseph refuses each time. Joseph says, "My master trusts me. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God." On one of these attempts, the last one in fact, she takes hold of his robe, and he runs away by slipping out of that robe. And again, we see a robe, and there's significance to it in Joseph's story. This robe showed Joseph's position in the house. He was a servant, but my guess is, and the way I picture this, is that he wasn't wearing the same robe that all of the servants would wear. He's wearing a robe that showed that he was still a servant, but in charge of the servants. So when he leaves his robe behind, it's easy for Potiphar's wife to say, "This is the man." So his robe is stripped away, and Potiphar's wife is furious with the rejection. So she lies. She makes up a story that Joseph was trying to rape her. Potiphar comes in, he believes his wife, he believes her lie, and he sends Joseph to prison. So here he is, living the dream. So this week, we're going to look at Joseph in prison. And the resounding theme that I want you to stick with here is that God was with Joseph in the pit. God was with Joseph in Potiphar's house. And we'll see right from the start today that God is with Joseph in the prison. We're going to pick up the story at the end of Genesis 39, starting in verse 19. It says, Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held. And there he remained. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. There's another theme. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. So the Lord was with Joseph in prison. It states it right from the beginning. Again, this is God showing his faithful love to Joseph. Joseph takes some time, and again, he ends up in this place of good standing with the warden. In fact, it lists him as his favorite. Just like in Potiphar's house, the warden begins to trust Joseph. It puts him in charge of the entire prison. He's in charge of all the prisoners, in charge of everything that happens in the prison. Picking up in verse 23, it says, the warden had no worries because Joseph took care of everything and the Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. Chapter 40, verse 1, it says, sometime later, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker offended the royal master. Pharaoh became angry with these two officials, and he put them in the prison where Joseph was, in the palace of the captain of the guard. They remained in prison for quite some time, and the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, who looked after them. So since Joseph's in charge of the jail, the prison, and over all of the prisoners, these two he's in charge of as well. And these are very high-ranking officials in Pharaoh's court. These guys serve Pharaoh directly every day. The cupbearer, his primary duty is to serve Pharaoh wine. And one of the reasons he does that is he tests it first. At least this is what they assume. He tests it first to make sure that it's not poisoned. So he adds a level of security for Pharaoh. So this is someone that has to be very loyal and very trustworthy. The chief baker, fairly self-explanatory. Obviously, he's baking for Pharaoh's court, taking care of all the baked goods and bread that are served daily to Pharaoh. And we don't know what they've done. We just know that they've offended Pharaoh somehow. And it says they remained in prison for quite some time, and Joseph took care of them. Picking up in chapter 40, verse 5, it says, while they were in prison, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed that they both looked upset. Why do you look so worried today? He asked them. So remember, Joseph has a relationship with these two. They've been in his care for quite some time. And just like all of us, when we get to know someone well, and we walk in and see them, and they seem distraught about something, we can pick up on those cues. And Joseph is doing that here. He's seeing that something's wrong. Something has troubled them. He knows them well enough to know that. And they replied, we both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean. Interpreting dreams is God's business, Joseph replied. Go ahead and tell me your dreams. When I first read this, I thought, I wonder if Joseph had some PTSD in this moment, that the last time that we see Joseph interpreting dreams, it really didn't go that well for him. He was not well received. But he says, tell me your dreams. And it's almost like he's saying, tell me your dreams, but if it's not good news, remember I'm just the messenger. Interpreting dreams is God's business. So if you're mad, don't be mad at me. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream first. In my dream, he said, I saw a grapevine in front of me. The vine had 3 branches that began to bud and blossom, and soon it produced clusters of ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand, so I took a cluster of grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup. Then I placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. This is what the dream means, Joseph said. The 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as his chief cupbearer. And please, remember me and do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. For I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison. But I did nothing to deserve it. I imagine the cupbearer is ecstatic, right? He's so relieved. He's been in prison for a long time and hasn't heard anything of what his fate might be. He knows that Pharaoh could have him killed at any time, or Pharaoh could just simply move on and forget about him and leave him in jail for the rest of his life. But here's Joseph interpreting his dream. It's favorable, and the cupbearer trusts him. I picture the baker being present and being like, wow, that went really well. Let me tell you my dream. So we see in chapter 40, verse 16, where when the chief baker saw that Joseph had given the first dream, such a positive interpretation, he said to Joseph, I had a dream too. In my dream, there were 3 baskets of white pastries stacked on my head. The top basket contained all pastries for Pharaoh, but the birds came and ate them from the basket on my head. You can almost feel the shift at the end of that, the pain in these words. Maybe even a realization as he's retelling the dream to Joseph. But the birds came and ate them from the basket on my head. He might not know exactly what this means, but there's a sense that this isn't a good thing. So Joseph goes on to interpret the dream. And like a lot of things in the Old Testament especially, this interpretation is a little R-rated. It says, this is what the dream means, Joseph told him. And I picture Joseph, who he knows this person. He's tried to, help this person in prison for a long time at this point. And I picture him not just commanding this interpretation, but almost coming alongside. He says, the 3 baskets also represent 3 days. 3 days from now, Pharaoh will lift you up and impale your body on a pole. The birds will come and peck away at your flesh. Now, the text doesn't tell us what the baker's reaction is, or how he felt, or what he said. I wonder sometimes if he felt the way Joseph's brothers did and was like, are you kidding me? Yeah, right. I'm going to discredit whatever you just said. I won't believe it. That's easier than believing what you just told me. Or maybe he did believe it. He had come to know Joseph. He trusted him. So maybe he did. Either way, we see what comes to pass. In verse 20, it says, Pharaoh's birthday came 3 days later, and he prepared a banquet for all his officials and staff. He summoned his cupbearer and chief baker to join the other officials. He then restored the cupbearer to his former position so he could again hand Pharaoh his cup. But Pharaoh impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had predicted when he interpreted his dream. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. Joseph's one request from someone he had created a relationship with and cared for while he was in prison. Please, remember me when things go well for you, Joseph said. I am wrongfully imprisoned. I was kidnapped and sold as a slave. Remember me. But the cupbearer forgets all about Joseph for the next 2 years. Living the dream. We keep choking in the office, the Livin, living. Maybe you've heard that before. It's living the dream, sold by his brothers, accused of rape by his master's wife, imprisoned for years. Joseph was estimated to be about 17 years old when he was sold into slavery. He's about 28 years old now. So 11 years have passed. I have to imagine that not all those days were good. There were dark days. It would have been so easy for Joseph to just check out. When Joseph was in the pit, it would have been so easy to say, my life's over. But as Raleigh pointed out, if God is in the pit, then what else do you need? When Joseph was in Potiphar's house, he was a slave. That's not a good thing, but at least with his duties, there was room to improve his situation. He was diligent in his tasks and served his master well. But then he's thrown in prison. And he could have just quit trying. But he's faithful to do what he knows is right by God. He trusts God and trusts that God is faithful to him as well. Band, you can come on out. So as I was reading this week and thinking about this message, the question of how do we relate is what was sitting in my mind. And I had this thought that not all prisons are made of stone. You may be looking at a situation in your life that can feel an awful lot like a prison. It may not be brick, it may not be bars, it may not be chains, but it feels like you're somehow in prison. And I want you to know this morning, that God is with you. Just like God was in the pit, just like God was in Potiphar's house, just like God was in the prison with Joseph. God is with you in your unique situation, and he's faithful. And he's working to transform wrong into right. He's a redeemer. There is no prison or situation that he cannot inhabit. He's not afraid. He's not far off. He's close, and he's present. So my encouragement is to be like Joseph. Trust God's faithfulness to you. Be diligent to carry out the work in front of you. And all the while, focus on Jesus. I believe so strongly in the vision that we have here at Zootown, that all would come to know the life-altering love of Jesus. It's that life-altering love that will carry you through the ups and downs of life. It's that life-altering love that'll sustain you in the pit. When the accusations seem too strong and the prison time seems to last longer than you can handle, cling to the everlasting love of Jesus. As I said before, I've been fascinated by the variety of robes in Joseph's story. I think we often say that somebody we know might wear lots of hats. And that's, a way to describe that they are capable of doing a lot of different things, or maybe capable is not even the right word, but they end up doing a lot of things. It's a term that sits with me in a sense, because I feel like I often can wear a lot of hats. But for Joseph, he wore a lot of robes. When he was young, he wore the robe of a shepherd, and his father gave him his coat of many colors. And this robe represented something. It spoke to his status. It placed him in charge, not in the field. And it was stripped away. When he ends up in Potiphar's house, he ends up with the new robe. And again, this means something. He's a slave. It speaks to his status. Eventually, even in charge of the whole house. And it's stripped away. In jail, undoubtedly, he wore a new robe. And again, it meant something. It speaks to his status, a prisoner. As I was picturing these robes, I was reminded of another man who was stripped of his robe. Hundreds of years after Joseph, a man named Jesus enters humanity. He lives a perfect life. He preaches perfect love. And he demonstrates perfect peace. But he's arrested. He's falsely accused, held captive in a pit, put on trial. His robe is stripped away from him, and he's crucified. But before he dies, he says the words that we so desperately need to hear. It is finished. You see, God sent his son, Jesus, to live out the life that you and I can't, and to take on the death that we can't take on. Jesus paid it all. All to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. This is the gift of salvation offered to all of us. James shared a quote by Henry Nouwen with me this week, and it just really sat strongly with me. I read it to you now. It says, "The mystery of God's love is not that our pain is taken away, but that God first wants to share that pain with us. Out of his divine solidarity comes new life. Jesus, being moved in the center of his being by human pain, is indeed a movement towards new life. God is our God, the God of the living. In the divine womb of God, life is always born again. The truly good news is that God is not a distant God, a God to be feared or avoided, a God of revenge, but a God who is moved by our pain and participates in the fullness of the human struggle. My friends, God is in the pit. God is in Potiphar's house. God is in the prison. And God is with you. Will you pray with me? God, in the moments when we feel forgotten, help us remember that you see us. When we are in a season of waiting, give us the courage to keep serving, keep trusting, and keep hoping. Use our gifts, even in hidden places, for your glory. And when the time is right, bring your plan to pass. Amen. I have 2 invitations for you this morning. The first is to be baptized. Baptism is an outward expression of the internal transformation that Jesus has done in your life. It's symbolic of the death to sin and our resurrection with Jesus. It's a statement of our commitment to follow Christ. And it's an act of obedience to Jesus. Jesus asked us to baptize the believers. Baptism does not save you. Jesus has done that for you. But it's an important step in your faith journey. We have water this morning, we have towels, and we have dry clothes. So I'd like to invite everyone after the service. We're going to sing one more song and take communion together. And after the service, we have a baptism tank set up just out front of the lobby outside. It's a beautiful day out. So check your kids out of Kids in the Zoo and then come out front and let's participate in baptism and celebrate that together. The second invitation we offer every week to the table of communion. Jesus, all throughout his ministry on earth, was always inviting people to come and see. So this morning, we invite you to come and see. We have crackers that represent the body of Jesus. At the Last Supper, he took bread and he broke it for the disciples. And he broke the bread saying, "This is my body, broken for you." We also have wine and juice available. And Jesus took the cup saying, "This is my blood, shed for you." So I invite you this morning, as we worship and sing this last song, please come. Communion table is open. We invite everyone to this table. There's no prerequisite here today, but I encourage you to come with a heart open and willing to meet with God. Additionally, if you'd like prayer today, we have James and Geraldine up here, and they'd love the opportunity to pray with you. So please meet with one of them as you come up. And then we'll see you outside for baptism shortly.